back to Express on this Tuesday, February the 12th. Well, a throne speech is being delivered today in British Columbia. It'll outline Premier Christy Clark's priorities over the 19-day legislative session. That's right, 19 days. But it'll also be the unofficial start to a provincial election campaign. Citizens in BC will be going to the polls on May 14th.
And right now it looks like the NDP are going to win that election. Still very early, of course. Michael Geoghegan is a political consultant speaking to us from our studios in Victoria. So Michael, what are you expecting? Let's start with today's throne speech by the Premier.
Well, today's throne speech will be the unofficial kickoff of the election campaign. We're going to have the provincial government talking about a number of issues. They're going to follow the example of Alberta and have an elected senator. They're going to be putting forward an advocate for seniors because of a recent kerfuffle involving the Auditor General out here in BC. They're now moving towards one 8-year term rather than 2 4-year terms. There'll be a number of initiatives where they're going to highlight jobs in the economy and portray themselves as sound fiscal managers. The NDP, of course, will be challenging them on that issue.
Michael, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is the kickoff to the election, right? Because a 19-day legislative session, is that the shortest in BC's history?
I'm sad to say it isn't.
Wow.
We have a tradition in this province. It goes back to the days of W.A.C. Bennett, and he regarded MLAs as part-time, and basically, it was him, his cabinet, and once in a while he'd have the MLAs come in and rubber stamp everything. So, I mean, we didn't even have a question period in British Columbia until the 1970s. We didn't even have Hansard until the 1970s. So we have this lingering tradition of infrequent legislative sessions.
The days of W.A.C. Bennett. Boy, oh boy. I've heard a lot of my family lives out there, Michael, and I hear a lot about W.A.C. Bennett whenever I go visit. Tell me this, what do you think about energy resources? There's this whole problem with Christy Clark and Alison Redford, the Northern Gateway Pipeline. Will the Premier talk about that tonight?
Well, it's a very interesting situation that the Liberals are in because, of course, they're talking up their liquid natural gas strategy. I mean, there's billions of dollars worth of revenue, which the province very much needs. We need it for healthcare. We need it for taking care of seniors. We need it for transportation, infrastructure, and the like. I mean, we spend $1 billion a year just on healthcare administration in this province. That's not doctors and nurses. That's just bureaucrats. And so we need to get that money from resource extraction. The Liberals don't want to be seen as anti-environmental, so they're casting a dubious eye on the Northern Gateway Pipeline, but talking up LNG. I think from an environmental standpoint, how much cleaner LNG is versus transportation of crude oil, I think that's a bit of a fine point, but they don't want to come across as anti-oil and gas sector. Meanwhile, the oil and gas sector in Alberta, they're very nervous about an NDP government because they're afraid they'll put the kibosh on everything. The problem that the NDP would have as government is they have to pay for everything, and you don't do it by saying no to resource extraction. So for all the people who are living in the Lower Mainland who don't like the idea of oil tankers and oil pipelines, that's what pays for your health care. That's what pays for a seniors care facility. And so there's going to be some very difficult political choices that both the current government and potentially the next government are going to have to face.
Michael, just quickly, I hear that next week a budget might come down. Why bother with such a short legislative session?
Well, it's because we went to a fixed election date. It ended up being set in the spring. There's been talk of moving it to the fall because, of course, you can put in a budget and then you have an election, and if there's a change in government, the next government will come along and say, oh well, this previous budget was full of lies and fabrications. So there has been some discussion about, if we're going to stick with fixed election dates, let's move it to a fall. So if there is a spring budget, there's more time to actually analyze it and determine its veracity.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Michael. Michael Geoghegan, a political consultant coming to us from Victoria, British Columbia.
And we're talking to him a lot, no doubt, because we have 3 months, give or take, until
May 14th.
a big election in BC. Today, meantime.